What I wanted to talk to you about is something I've been thinking about the last probably couple of quarters, fiscal quarters, that everyone has been going through in the economic recession of the globe, really, and it's the cost, right, of anything, right? It's the cost of a car, it's the cost of a house, it's the cost, in this case, of software, it's the cost of IT services. I mean, in the world today we live in, I always joke with customers that we live in a world that's 99.86% Microsoft customers. I don't know if that stat's right. I have no data to prove that's right or wrong, honestly. But most of us live partly in a Microsoft ecosystem. So when I talk about that to customers, I always say there's like three big ecosystems in my mind. There's three big ones. There's Apple and there's Google and there's Microsoft. Apple being right a smaller one, more consumer based, maybe not targeted toward an enterprise level customer, where they have hardware, they have desktops and laptops and phones, right? They're known for their app ecosystem. They even have a smaller productivity suite, and they obviously have their own OS, right, with iOS. And that's part of that ecosystem. And you can live in that ecosystem and do a lot of your work, because a lot of apps, Google apps and Microsoft apps, run on Apple, but they are not an enterprise grade software developer, right? They don't have enterprise level file repositories. They don't have enterprise level security. They don't have enterprise level CRMs or any of the stuff that you're going to need to do your job as a knowledge worker. So then you step into Google. They're a bigger ecosystem, right? But they don't have the things that Apple has. They don't have laptops and desktops. They don't really have an OS per se that's enterprise grade. Sure, they have an OS for Android and Android type devices, but that's not an enterprise grade OS. You're not working in HR and using a Google OS, right? That's not what you're typically going to do. And that's when we step into the third and biggest ecosystem in the world, Microsoft, right? So most knowledge workers, information workers, we're not talking about the unicorns of the group. We're talking about just the majority of people that are doing their job, right? Checking email, creating a Word document or a document in general, or Excel document or a document in general from Google. It doesn't matter. That's where the bulk of your work is going to be done. And so as we step into a Microsoft ecosystem, we'll just keep it easy. We'll just keep it enterprise level. There's three choices, right? There's E1 for basic, maybe mobile workers or workers in the field or points of service, those kind of retail workers that are doing just web-based stuff. That's E1 level. And then you get into the majority of what everyone's at is that E3, right? That the ability to have office productivity, the ability to have Active Directory and SharePoint and OneDrive and all the things you do as a knowledge worker. And then obviously there are a larger percentage from E1 and E3 go into the E5 if they need advanced security features or advanced Power BI features. Really is where the great main motivator, I think most of the enterprises go to the E5 level. But when you're at an E3 level, right, that enterprise grade level that most everyone's at from a knowledge worker perspective, that's the cost of doing business, right? If you're a Microsoft customer, you can't do without the E3. The E3 is really your baseline choice for every single knowledge worker. For the advanced ones that need advanced security level stuff, this is not a security conversation, you can jump to that E5, but most of customers can do their job at an E3 level. And in that Microsoft ecosystem, they obviously have an OS, right? They have Windows. They have a CRM solution with Dynamics. They have a file repository solution, an enterprise-grade one, SharePoint. They have a user one at OneDrive. They obviously have email with Exchange Online. They obviously have a productivity suite with Office 365. They have pretty much everything you need to do your job as a knowledge worker. And then when you go outside of that ecosystem, maybe for best-of-breed applications, right? So maybe Active Directory is not good enough for you or doesn't have enough features for you. You can go to an Okta or a Ping. If Dynamic CRM is not good enough for you, you can go to a Salesforce, right? These best-in-breed applications. And when Teams doesn't have enough for you, a lot of customers go to Zoom, right? So these best-of-breed applications. But then we talk about the economic situation, and we see a lot of IT departments, and for good reason, trying to collapse as much as they can of IT. They can try to stop that duplicate spend And for example, if you have Dynamics, you don't need Salesforce. If you have Salesforce, you don't need Dynamics. If you have Google Drive, you don't need SharePoint. But all those things kind of come with that Microsoft ecosystem. So IT departments are looking for that duplicate spend to collapse as much IT spend in that licensing perspective. And we're just talking, and notice I haven't talked about all the other points of revenue, or sorry, not revenue, of cost of an IT department. Everyone's so fixated on the cost of the license, they haven't thought about the other parts of that story a lot of times. And I spend a lot of times with customers showcasing, hey, beyond the cost of the license, there's a lot of other stuff that actually is way more expensive in your IT department. And when I talk about these things, I kind of break it down into a couple of subcategories. So the cost of the license, right, is certainly a baseline cost. If you're in the Microsoft world, that E3 is the baseline. You have to buy it. That's the minimum thing you have to buy to be productive in a knowledge worker perspective, right? But then we talk about the cost of deploying all the stuff, right? The partner ecosystem in the world today, when I say partners or channel partners or our professional services partners or maintenance partners, they exist because, one, it's hard to deploy stuff. When I say deploy stuff, pick something. Let's just make it easy. Let's just say phone, for example. It's easy to deploy software. Software is easy. It's all the stuff behind the software that's super hard, like a phone system, like a call center, like firewalls and switches and IP gateways. That is complex. The average IT person doesn't have the vertical knowledge to do everything. They are specified, or when you're a jack of all trades, you can do a lot of stuff okay, but you probably aren't a phone system expert, and you can deploy an enterprise level phone system. So buying it is the part that's the cheapest, right? And pick whatever, right? Pick a Ring Central or Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Buying that license is the cheapest part of that solution, because once you bought it, you now have to deploy it. And that's where a big bulk of your costs come into play. Because whether you have people on staff that can do that job, right? If you have maybe a Cisco phone engineer or a group of them, or if you have a Microsoft Teams voice engineer or a group of them, Zoom, the point is that cost of deployment is a bigger cost than the cost of the license. Think about that again. The cost of deployment is bigger than the cost of the license. So everyone's so fixated on the cost of the license. What's it going to cost you to deploy it? And this is not a pro or con anybody or anything. I'm just saying some vendors are way easier to deploy than others. So factor that into your cost of your UCaaS solution, per se, or CRM solution, call center solution, file repository solution. The cost of deploying it is exponentially greater than the cost of buying it. By the way, the cost of deploying it is kind of a one-time cost, right? You bought the license, you deployed the license. Now here comes the next level of cost of any solution of any modality, is the maintenance of that cost. So once you have it bought, deployed, and now it's out there, who's training everyone on how to use it? Who's administering this solution globally? Who's changing and modifying and adding users globally? Who's maintaining the system globally? Who's operating the system globally? Who's supporting the system globally? Who's troubleshooting the system globally? Cost of license, cost of deployment, one-time costs, right? Cost of maintaining it, operating, administering it, supporting it is an everyday ongoing cost for anything. CRM solution, file repository solution, call center, phone system, APIs and SDKs, all those things take amazing amounts of maintenance, administration, and overhead supporting to run the system. So the maintenance is the biggest bulk of a cost of anything. UCaaS, file repository, everything. The cost of maintaining it, supporting it, troubleshooting it, designing disaster recovery solutions for it, that is the bulk of every single cost. And a lot of times I'm talking to enterprises, they don't factor that in to the cost of IT. Everyone's looking to collapse IT costs, but that's on the licensing side. No one's thinking about, hey, what if we did cut something out and we had to deploy something new? What's the cost of that deployment? And then who maintains all that? Those are the bulk of your costs. And then we get into basic stuff like user effectiveness, user efficiency, user happiness. What if you collapsed IT and you saved a bunch of money on the licenses, but then they were almost unusable because users weren't happy with the choice? Then you talk about attrition of users. You talk about adoption for users. You talk about training for users. All these things, the piece of paper in front of you, the cost of license, is super easy to figure out. It's a number in front of you. You can do math. You have a calculator. But it's all those other costs, maybe softer costs. Deployment's pretty straightforward, right? You hire a partner or you have individual people that can do it in-house. You're paying them a salary. You're paying a partner. SOW fees. The cost of maintenance and administration, support, administration, all that is a softer cost, but is by far the biggest cost. I think I'm saying it over and over again. Please, if you need, maybe want to talk about that, I'd be happy to have like some sort of blog interaction with you, meeting with you, just so we can bring, because I don't know everything. I don't even close to know everything. I can see that a lot of customers aren't factoring these things in when it comes to deciding on costs of IT. It's just an interesting topic, and I see a lot of things going on LinkedIn about it, and I wanted to get your thoughts. What did you think about that talk track, that topic, a conversation? Are you seeing it in your organization? Are you having discussions with it? If you're a partner and having discussions with your customers, or maybe you're an enterprise and you're wanting to know how do we cut costs of IT, I don't think licensing is the way to do it. I can totally see how deployment is a factor here, or maintenance and administration, happiness, training, change management. All these are way bigger costs than the cost of the license. Just a thought on a average, was it Wednesday? I don't know. Let me know what you think. Hey, Patrick Kelley. I'm a Zoom distinguished architect. I do work for Zoom, and I am a full-time employee of Zoom, but I am not in no way a figurehead or a spokesman for Zoom. All the thoughts and things that I share are completely of my own making, for better or for worse. Oh, and if you like this discussion, hey, let me know. 1, by liking this video. 2, maybe by subscribing to my YouTube channel. And then 3, by commenting and telling me what other ideas maybe you'd like to talk about.